Hello, Miss Danielle.
Hi, Amanda.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So you and I decided to get together, our little mischievous selves that are creators in this beautiful world, and you've been teaching shaman facilitator classes and the medicine wheel and the mini wheel, and I've been wanting to do a retreat down in Zion's. So we're getting together and doing this. So which I'm extremely excited about, because first of all, Zion's is a place. It's actually in Springdale, Utah. It's a place that is so close to my heart, and it's interesting. The energetics, just being there in the energetic space, already starts working. Every time I go down there, I'm like, oh, it's moving my stuff, and it's either a call for just deep healing, or sometimes it kind of turns little things, and I'm like, oh, I guess I get to look at that today. So it's already this beautiful, beautiful space, and this healing space, really. And you're going to teach the mini wheel, and a lot of people have no idea what the hell that is. So can you explain what that is?
Yeah. So the mini wheel is an abbreviated 1 weekend transformational experience. So to put it into perspective, I teach a year-long transformation course called the Full Medicine Wheel, where we meet 4 times a year and we move through the medicine wheel that is rooted in the practices and principles and traditions of South American shamanism. So the traditions in the Andean spiritual traditions, which is linked to the Incan traditions of this particular medicine path. And so the full wheel is a year-long transformation course where we meet 4 times a year, and we spend a full weekend, a Thursday to a Sunday, each time that we meet, really diving deep into the experience of each of the 4 directions. So in this path, it's the south, the west, the north, and the east. In the mini wheel, what we do is look at using the map of the medicine wheel. And the principles of the medicine wheel are that we look at where we're identified with a certain story or a theme that's happening in our life and why we're identified there. And that's the south, essentially. And then in the west, we look at the limiting belief that has developed out of that story. So if we have a story of our life, that this is the story of my life, this is what keeps happening, this is what always happens, this is what always happens, so much so that I just expect it to happen, what happens in that pattern is that we end up having a belief system that's associated with the story. And so in the West, we look at what is that belief system that we are holding consciously and subconsciously. And what happens with belief systems is that if it's a belief, it must be proven true. So our belief systems become these programs that are operating that get proven true out in the world over and over and over again, which then feeds right back into the story of this is the story of my life. Right? So
and proves those programs right, which we
right,
don't
exactly
want to do, but
yeah. Yep. So we're going to look at, what's the story that we're identified with? What's the belief system that has come out of that story? And then we're going to look at the roles that we've identified with that are part of that story and that belief system. And that's the north. So and then it comes around to the east, the last direction, where we begin to transcend that pattern. So in the mini wheel, what we're going to do in a 4-day retreat is come together and say, okay, what is it that's going on in your life? What is the current situation or the current pattern that you're working with, or that you're recognizing keeps showing up or keeps popping up for you? And we're going to begin to bring transformation and awareness to it. So we're going to say, okay, if this is the pattern, this is the story of the pattern, this is the belief system that is operating within the story of that pattern, this is your identification within that story, because we identify with our story unconsciously, consciously, whatever it is, we actually become identified with it. And then once we bring that awareness and that consciousness to it, we can actually shift out of that pattern. We can transcend it. And that's the work of the East, is to recognize that we can actually, you know, in our evolutionary journey that we're all on, it's this ascension spiral. And we come to the place in the East where we actually we can transcend that pattern and come into a different engagement with ourselves and with the world. And you've heard me say this many times, Amanda, that it's all an inside job, right? That we have to see where we're holding it internally, and the shift needs to happen internally for our external world to change. That we don't just look at what's happening in our life and decide we're not happy with it and we don't like it, and then reach out into the external world and change everything, right? Change our spouse, change our job, change our house, change our town, and think that it's going to shift. Because everywhere you go, there you are. And so we take a deep dive into looking at that pattern, and we do the personal transformation on the inside. And we'll work with different practices and principles that are associated with those 4 directions, and to step into the energetic processes and the healing. And you'll come out of the weekend with transformation around whatever it is that you're coming into the weekend to work with, and to have more clarity and healing and transformation around. And you'll leave with practical tools and processes that you can then use as you continue on your journey, as you continue navigating your life. So again, there's a lot of practical take-home pieces that you'll get that will serve you, and they become your tools. And you'll leave with different meditation practices, and we'll step into ceremony and really drop into what it's like to bring a shift in consciousness to ourselves, how we operate in the world, and in turn how we begin to view and participate in the world.
I love it. And I know in my personal experience, it's been the shamanic path has been the deepest medicine that I've ever experienced, where when I have done my own work, the reflection of my world without needing to actually reach out into it, like you're saying, and trying to fix something out there. Like when this changes internally, the external changes. And it's been, for me personally, so fascinating and beautiful to witness. And, you know, as you're talking, I know I've heard a lot of people that do retreats. A lot of times these amazing things will happen in a retreat or a healing retreat. And then when they go home, they don't know what to do. Like there's a detachment piece. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like, at least again in my experience, like it is so embodied, and there's so many practical tools that it's definitely something that you do. This is where I feel like this is different. What you teach is different in this retreat aspect, where it is like, it's a somatic experience. You're coming home with this change.
Yeah, you're coming home with the change. And we work a lot with the integration piece. And that's the key. That's actually what you're speaking to, Amanda, is that place where we want to integrate it so deeply that what happens, the byproduct when we step into the energetics, is that we shift our vibrational frequency. And when our vibrational frequency changes, then our engagement in the world changes, because we begin to see that shift reflected back to us, right? That's what you're speaking to, is that the external world changes because your vibratory state changes. And when your vibratory state changes, then the universe is mirroring or reflecting back to you your internal state of affairs. And we talk a lot about the integration and really allowing that shift to anchor and to hold, so that you're not just coming through a weekend and saying, well, that was a really cool experience, but having not integrated the change, you go home, and this is where people end up either kind of sliding into habituated patterns and or not seeing the shift hold, because it just was a cerebral experience as opposed to deep.
Yeah, or it's sitting here in the astrals, and it's energetics. And I couldn't quite bring it down into the physical and then root it into the earth.
Right. Right. And that's what we spend a lot of time embodying, the shift and the change, and to take it all the way in, and to actually begin to recognize ourselves as multidimensional beings in this 4-body system, where we have our physical body, our mental emotional body, our soul body, our energetic matrix. And we want to integrate any shift and change that happens in our life through all 4 body systems, so that it is integrated all the way down to the physical. And as you said, to anchor it and root it down into the earth. Because after all, we are on the earth plane making this lived experience. So if we keep it up here, then that's great. But then we're not taking it all the way in and actually living it in our physical body. And so we spend a lot of time really working with that principle and that practice, and the meditations that we do, the ceremonies that we do, the different exercises that we do are all about being able to integrate it at all 4 levels. So in the mini wheel, we will, invite people to come for this beautiful retreat down in beautiful Springdale, and to really look at, okay, what is something that is current in my life that I want to bring deep transformation to? And that's what we're going to do in the mini wheel. Whereas the full wheel, we say, let's take your entire life as you know it to exist and bring deep transformation to it. Which is why that is a year-long program versus a weekend, where we say, okay, what's happening that is current and prevalent that you want to bring clarity, shift to, change to, and or cultivate more of, right? Because one of the beautiful things about this medicine path is this is not just about what is not working in your life. We can absolutely look at things and say, hey, I want to bring some shift and some change to this. I'm no longer in alignment with it. But we can use this work to really cultivate more of what we want to see created in our life. So we can also come into the mini wheel and say, I am looking to cultivate more of this, to bring this into creation, into manifestation. And what we'll do through that process is clear out the old stuff that's in the way, that is bringing in, the history or the past or the limitation to what's possible. And so, everybody's going to come in wherever they come in with whatever it is that they're wanting to work with. But I just want to make it clear that this isn't just about like, wow, this is the stuff that's not working, and I can only take this workshop if it's about what's not working well in my life.
Yeah.
But rather we can, yes, of course we can address that. And it's a very effective path to address that, but we can also use the same medicine for creating and cultivating more of what we want.
Beautiful. My last question, because I feel like this is something people will ask, what if I'm religious? Like, what if I have a religious belief system? Does this bump up against it? Yeah, can you speak to that a little?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the shamanic path is not a religion. It is actually an experiential path, meaning that you can believe in anything you want, any higher power. You can belong to any religion that you want. And this is not going to ask you to denounce or be in direct conflict with whatever your religious affiliation is, because we're not coming in and saying, not that, but this. We're actually saying, that's wonderful that this is your religion and this is your faith and this is your belief. And now let's actually enhance your experience in your religion through a deeper understanding of yourself as a spiritual being, as a direct channel to God, source, spirit, Allah, whomever it is that's your higher power, and to actually embody more of that experience and how to show up and engage it very consciously and intentionally, and to open up your own channel for your deeper connection with spirit, and how to actually bring more and more of your connection with spirit down into a relatable everyday experience, that it's not just about when you go to church on this given day, but how do you actually practice your religion every day and embody those teachings. So this path actually opens you up to, it can open you up to have an even deeper connection with your religion and your principles and practices and teachings of that faith.
Awesome. Thank you, Dannielle. That's
Yeah.
that's perfect. I think that about covers it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we've not covered, but I'm thrilled to do this weekend with you. And yeah, whoever's watching, get signed up because there's limited spaces available.
Mm-hmm.
There's some private rooms that are available. There's also shared room options available. And yeah, you can find the details on my website, and we'll put that in the comments. So thank you.
Wonderful.
So much.
You're welcome.
See you.